So I apologize for the insult here, but when you're trying to get into self-improvement and just take control of your life and really just take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and as you should, you're actually just a big, stupid, stinky baby. Now, before you click off this video in a huge fit of rage and start typing angry comments at me, of course, yes, what I just said was largely tongue-in-cheek, but I'm actually not entirely exaggerating, so let me explain this for a second. So when we start trying to improve ourselves and pursue our goals, normally we're thinking that what we need is to become very strong-willed, to become very independent, and to be able to really thrive in any situation when we're put into any uncomfortable environment, regardless of any other factor, which is of course a great skill. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't nurture that skill, because the fact is that we need to be able to do that from time to time. However, it's not actually the full picture in and of itself. So I'm actually going to suggest a bit of a different idea that I actually think is much more crucial for your long-term development. So in this niche, we talk a lot about self-improvement, and that's often the term that we put onto it, and it's the focus of what we're doing, improving ourselves. However, I think that a better word for what we're actually trying to do, and for what I think is actually the better thing for the general, accomplishment that we're trying to do, which is to live the best possible life that we can, the better word should actually be wellness. And the reason that wellness is not the same thing as self-improvement, it's not entirely pedantic, because wellness is not about how much money you make. It's not about your materialistic success or how, successful you might seem on the surface, independent of anything else. It's actually something a lot more holistic, and it's something that's a lot more conducive to expressing your human nature. And it's a different thing in self-improvement, because self-improvement tends to be a whole lot more focused on all the first things that I just said and kind of creating this more artificial version of what actually is living a good life. And if you've ever felt like you've struggled with your goals or possibly even burnt out, chances are you were leaning far too onto the self-improvement side of things and not actually taking into account the wellness side of things, which again is what I'm suggesting. Now, realize that self-consciousness, and again, this is a term that I'm probably going to bring up again, and possibly even outside of this video, but that is the thing that makes us primarily different from animals, and that is what gives us the ability to act either ethically or unethically. We typically don't tend to apply philosophy or ethics to animals because we don't consider them to be self-conscious. So with this idea of self-consciousness in mind, what I'm suggesting is that opposing to the voice that I first mentioned, which is the one that seeks to be independent and very self-sufficient, very much strong on its own right, that you should actually be strengthening an opposing voice that is aware of your own human self-consciousness and that actually caters to that self-consciousness and is aware of your own weaknesses and makes sure that you are placed in situations and that you are doing what is most conducive to your own success and so that you can thrive, just as if you were responsible and charged with the health and safety of a fresh newborn baby. So this isn't going to be a full guide style video that is, hours long. It is brimming with every possible detail that I can think of on this topic, which by the way is something that I intend to do in the future. So if there's anything specific you want to see with a long form guide like that, then go ahead and let me know in the comments because I'll be looking into those. But I'm just going to give a quick rundown here and I'll give you the structure of this video. So first I'm going to go over this thought in a little bit more detail and this thought strategy and what exactly I'm actually referring to in the first place. And then I'm going to go a little bit further and explain why this thought actually matters and why you should even bother believing it or why you shouldn't bother believing it. And then if you stick around till the end with me here, what I'm actually going to do is give you the actual actionable advice that I personally recommend that can actually help you avoid all these issues that I talked about, like burnout and inconsistency, and help you become an absolute consistent powerhouse in your goals long term. But first of all, who is this not for? So this is not going to be a quick productivity hack that is going to 10x your productivity and your progress the instant that you implement it. And likewise, it's not something that I'm thinking of implementing short term or something that I want you to implement short term that is going to be something to really quickly get a little bit of extra progress. So this is actually going to be a long-term thinking pattern, and I think it's something that should change on a profound level, and that's what I'm trying to give you here. So if you're thinking more short-term, and don't get me wrong, there are times in your life where you're going to have to commit to those more short-term stages where you really are just going to have to buckle down and just do something that you don't want to do. There's nothing wrong with that from time to time, but what I'm actually talking about here is something more long-term. So then who is this for? So this advice is for you, for the person who does not need to be told to use more willpower, the person who does not need to be told to be disciplined, the person who has done those things and who knows how to do those things for any period of time, but the person who, like myself, is aware that those things are not going to be the drivers that can carry someone consistently through their goals and to actually to live a sustainable life long term that is actually the most conducive to what I'm going to call wellness again. Because the fact is that discipline and willpower, and these things are not the full picture. And what you should actually be pursuing is a bit more of a wellness approach where you are more aware and a little bit more conscious of these things, because the self-motivation thinking pattern that you should always be able to just draw on this bottomless pit of inspiration and to just grit, to just do what you want to do, is just a fallacy. That's all that it is. So without any further ado, let's get right into this content.
Let's do this.
So getting back to this idea of self-consciousness is the primary human trait, and it's what makes us different from animals. The fact is that most animals on this planet, I mean, of course, there are very intelligent animals, but none that are quite as self-conscious as humans, because that is the thing that makes us humans and that makes us the rulers of this planet, generally speaking. But if you think about self-consciousness, it's our ability to see our own weaknesses and to see the weaknesses of others, but especially ourselves. So because of that, we ethically have a responsibility to cater to our own weaknesses and to ensure that our weaknesses don't cause the suffering of others. And this is what a lot of people don't realize. And of course, I'm not saying that people don't try to favor others without first thinking about themselves. But if you do exactly that and think about others before thinking about yourself, you'll find that it's actually very difficult to care for others if you yourself are not healthy enough to literally provide that. And again, not saying that people aren't going to try for an amount of time, but it usually doesn't work out very favorably for people or their loved ones long term. So you should be aiming to take care of yourself first and foremost. So then, where does this big old dumb, stupid, stinky baby come into play? Now realize that at any given moment, you may be doing things that are good for you, or you may be doing things that are bad for you, or obviously, some combination of both. Now, when you're doing things that are bad for you, and I realize that the definition is vague and different for everybody, but when you're doing things that are bad for you, it's almost always coming from a place of weakness, not from a place of malicious intent. So for example, if you were charged with, again, we're going to get back to the baby, but if you were charged with taking care of a baby and you were completely responsible for its own health and safety, a totally independent creature from yourself, would you allow it to do things that hurt it? Again, it doesn't really know what it's doing. It's just going out of its way and, trying to stick forks into outlets and all this stuff. But would you allow it to do that? Or would you actually stop, slap the cigarette out of the baby's hand and say, no, I'm charged and responsible for taking care of you, so I'm not going to allow you to do things that are going to hurt you? And make no mistake, I don't want you to confuse what I'm saying with taking it easy or always being easy on yourself, because what's good for you might not necessarily be what's the easiest. In fact, often what's good for you and what's actually most conducive and what's going to give you the best quality of life long term, for the long term, is actually going to be stuff that is the most difficult to do. And that is absolutely intentional. That is the way that it should be, and you'll know that you're doing things correctly, because from time to time, you really don't want to do the things that you should be doing and the things that are going to be the most conducive. But there's a large difference between excessive, mindless forcing and actually staying on top of your energy levels and having to actually take care of yourself and to do the things that are going to be the best for you. And that's where this perspective can actually start to be so powerful. And if you've ever struggled with issues like burnout or this kind of gritty sense of a lack of drive to do anything, then you know what it feels like. And I know what that feels like. But when you're actually staying on top of your energy levels and you're actually doing things in a way that is consistent and repeatable long term, it really is a superpower. And think back to those times like that where you would be forcing yourself to do things. And think of yourself in the sense of this third party, again, to be very exaggerated and vague, but this can actually be extremely helpful to literally imagine, would you have forced a baby to do those things? And of course, I don't mean in the literal sense, but would you have forced a third party and a very weak and self-conscious creature, which realize is yourself, to do the things that you did and expect them to succeed? If the answer is no, then obviously you know why things turned out the way they did. The fact is that you are a self-conscious creature, and you are the baby. So then how is knowing this actually going to help you in any substantial way? Now, the fact is that what I'm talking about here and what I'm suggesting is actually an identity change, and it's something that has to happen on an extremely profound level. The fact is that I can't actually help you to believe this if you don't want to believe it. And I know, as guru-ish as this sounds, and I know how often this statement is used to mislead people and, for example, to sell bullshit products, but the fact is, if you don't believe something is going to work, then it's not going to work. And that's especially true for the things that I talk about here and for things involving the mind, because, I hate to sound pseudo-psychology-esque, but if you're trying to do all of these things and experiment with these thought patterns, but at the end of the day, you're kind of still in this back-paced mindset of, meh, it's just whatever. If it doesn't automatically do it for me, then it probably just wasn't for me. And you're never actually committing fully to something and fully trying to implement something on a very deep level, and at least trying to truly implement it as a part of who you are long-term. Then it's no wonder that you're not going to get anything out of it. The fact is that what I'm suggesting here is something long-term, and it's something that only you can truly spark. And of course, I can try and tell you what helps, and I'm telling you this because I believe it, but if you don't do anything about it, and if you don't want to do anything about it, then of course nothing is going to happen. Now, at the same time, the thing about that is that you are totally free to do the things that are going to be most conducive to your personal happiness and to your personal wellness. Because the fact is, maybe what I'm saying here today and the things that I'm suggesting that you do and the things that I'm suggesting that you think about are not actually going to be the best things for you, for all I know. And in that case, it's totally your prerogative and it's your responsibility, actually, to make sure that you are being critical of the information that I'm telling you and that you're applying the aspects that are applicable to you and tossing the aspects that aren't, because I actually don't know your situation. I don't know you personally. I can't get a response back from you through this camera. So I don't actually know if the things that I'm saying are going to be directly applicable in your situation. I believe they will be in most cases, but you have to think for yourself and you have to do things from your own point of view. So think critically for a second and actually ask yourself if this advice is applicable in your situation. And if it is, and you find it to be true in your situation, and be honest with yourself, then you can begin the step of implementing. So then, if you've decided that this is true for you and this is actually going to be the most helpful for you, then what should you do after the fact? Now, like I just said, this is something that happens on a very profound level, and this is identity change that we're talking about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the principles of that. But the most primary thing, if there's one thing you can think about, is that once deciding who you want to be and making sure that the reasons for doing so are sound, that's actually to prove it to yourself long-term, repeatedly and consistently with small wins. And the more you do this, the more it starts to ingrain itself and become a positive feedback loop. And the thing is, it can be very difficult right away to get started, and that's because you don't have any momentum going. But like most things in life, once you get momentum going, it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy and a bit of a positive feedback loop, which is exactly what you're looking for. But the truth is that the stronger your ideals become and the stronger your belief of who yourself is becomes, the more easily those things will come to you, and the more you will begin to solidify and strengthen and begin to kind of carve out that path deeper and deeper of who it is that you truly are. So when you decide who you are and you make a point out of carving out that path exactly where you want it and where you need it to be, your identity becomes stronger and stronger. And this is something that's true for all niches and just human nature in general. Identity is an extremely strong thing, and people tie themselves so deeply to it that it can be an extremely powerful tool, either for good or for bad, as we often see in a lot of the conflict in just human society in general. And the more you walk around in your daily life, the more you should start to think and become more efficient and be more aware of what you're doing and make sure that it's consistent and repeatable over time, just as if you were prescribing it to a baby. And again, I can't tell you exactly what daily habits or routines might be helpful for you because it's going to be different for every person. But in the end, it's the identity change and the deciding of who you want to be and proving it to yourself over time that's going to be the most impactful. Because in the end, if you see yourself as a person and you begin to truly believe and fundamentally, on a spiritual level, believe that you are responsible for taking care of yourself and there is nothing else in this world that can take that away from you, then like I just said, there's nothing else in this world that's going to take that away from you. You start to become much more conscious and you see it as a given because you are 100% committed and you know that this is what you have to do and there's no question about it because you believe it on an identity level. So going forward with this, the truth is that this is a long-term thing, like I already tried to tell you, and this is not something that's ever going to be finished, and it's going to have to be constantly maintained over time. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean that it has to be difficult, and the truth is that once you get these positive feedback loops going, that it can actually be very easy and very enjoyable to keep the maintenance going on these type of identity things. Again, the more you believe something, the more you will continue to believe it because your identity becomes more and more ingrained. I'm, of course, not giving you an excuse to do a bunch of useless, difficult work for no reason because it doesn't have to feel like work. And in the end, it really shouldn't feel like work. But you should aim to change your identity with this one belief. So remember that inside of all of us, there is a big, fat, sloppy, clumsy, stinky, old baby. And it is our responsibility to take care of it. So if I gave you something valuable today, consider subscribing to my channel and just hitting that red button if you click off of this video, and somewhere down there it'll be there. And what will happen if you click on that button is that you'll get more of my videos sent to your homepage, and you'll get updated. You'll keep me motivated to keep making content. And when I make those longer form guides and those more helpful videos in the future, those very high quality uploads, you'll get them sent just right to your homepage, and that'll just tell YouTube to give you more videos that are like this. So with that being said, I hope I could give you something valuable, and take care of your mind, especially when you don't feel like it.